was walking my kids to school today, to the bus stop, and next to the bus stop, plastered on the wall, is this big sign from the Misran HaBriyut, the Ministry of Health here in Israel. And I'm looking at this chart, and I like studying charts because I one time read a book called How to Lie with Charts about 15 years ago. I also read another book at the same time called How to Lie with Maps. And I also read Freakonomics and Super Freakonomics, which is How to Lie with Statistics. And all these books are dealing with taking data without changing it and presenting it in a way that gives it meaning. That's what all charts are, really. You're taking information and you have to condense it somehow. So the job of the one who makes the chart or the map or whatever, his job is to present it in a way that gives meaning to it. He has to interpret it. So it's inevitable that there's going to be a bias, there's going to be some kind of an agenda. And in the last 15 years, I think, without exception, I have never seen a chart since then that is not biased or misleading in some way. I'm not trying to get political over here. I'm not trying to talk about whether you should get a vaccine, shouldn't get a vaccine, whether the government should be imposing their rules or not. It's nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to show how data is misrepresented in order to give over a certain point. So if we look at this chart over here, it says over here that those who are very ill under the age of 60, of that group, they're critically ill, let's see, under the age of 60. So of those who did not have any vaccine at all, that's 82% of this group. And that's this big purple tower over here. 82% of those who are under 60 that are critically ill did not get the vaccine at all. 16% got 2 vaccines, and 2% got 3 vaccines. So the implication of the chart is that you should get a vaccine, preferably as many as you can, because it goes from up, down, and down. That's what the chart implies. Now, I just love studying charts, and I'm looking at this chart, and I realized that there's information missing, and one thing led to another, until I finally came to the big point, which is there's information missing from this chart. Now, without that information, this chart is utterly meaningless. 100% has no meaning at all because of this information that's missing, which is, we're going to get to it by the end. But first, I want to get there, so we're going to build up to it. First, what I want to do is I want to show that there's a glaring omission on this chart. It doesn't affect the chart so much, but there's something missing from this chart that's kind of jumps out if you're studying it. Because we have over here 3 groups. We have those who didn't get any vaccines, those who got 2, and those who got 3. What happened to the group of those who only got 1 vaccine? Where is it? Why isn't it on the chart? How much percentage is it? Well, we know how much percentage it would be because this chart, 82% plus 16 is 98, plus 2 is 100. Means these 3 bars by themselves add up to 100% of all of those under 60 that are critically ill. That means if we had a group over here called those who only had 1 vaccine, their tower would be all the way at the bottom, 0%. Now this is what the chart would look like if we added in the 1 vaccine, someone who got just 1 vaccine of that group. So this chart is a problem, because if you're trying to convince people to get vaccines, so this chart is gonna maybe convince someone to get 1 vaccine. It's better than being 0, but that wouldn't convince them to get any more than that, because they're worse off if they get 2 or 3, which is not actually true, but that's what this chart is showing. So it would be quite convenient for whoever's making this chart to delete that group, because it doesn't look good. It doesn't give over the meaning that they want. So we can just go ahead and get rid of it. But the question still stands, because those who made this chart knew about this one vaccine. So they have to explain it somehow to themselves. Why, in fact, is it that those who only got one vaccine have no representation in this group? The answer probably is because a very tiny percentage of the population actually only got one vaccine. Because in Israel, when the vaccines first came out, there were two groups of people. Those who were taking the vaccines and those who weren't. And those who were taking the vaccines took two, because that is what was being recommended. So almost nobody was taking one vaccine. So because of that, almost nobody who had one vaccine became critically ill. It's just a statistic thing. To illustrate it, let's say that 82% of the population wears blue shirts, and 18% of the population wears red shirts. So if we walked into a hospital and we saw that of all the sick people in the hospital, 82% of them are wearing blue shirts, that doesn't mean that blue shirts make people sick. It means that 82% of the population wears blue shirts. It's called a representation. It's expected to be that way. In order to give these numbers meaning, we have to know what percentage of the population actually got the vaccines. Had none, had one, had two, or had three. Then we would be able to have a meaningful chart. What is much more important when you're looking at this kind of data is you need to ask the question this way. Of those who had no vaccines, what percentage of them are critically ill? And compare that with 0, 1, 2, and 3 vaccinations. That would be meaningful data by itself. I'm going to make up some numbers over here. But let's just say that the number of those vaccinated, let's take you have a population of 100 people, let's say, whatever you want. You could say this is a percentage. You have, let's say 40% of the population had no vaccine at all. Nobody got one vaccine. 30% got two, and 30% got three. So really, the vaccine's effectiveness really would look like this. This is whatever that percentage is. Whatever percentage of them are getting really sick. And this number goes down as you take more vaccines. But if you take this number of those vaccinated and you multiply it by the vaccine's effectiveness, you're going to get a chart like this, like the one that the Misran HaBriyut put out. And it exaggerates the danger of having no vaccine at all. It's just the way the numbers work out. What we really want to see is this, the vaccine's effectiveness. They should show us this chart. They're not showing us this chart because it's not as scary. They want to scare us. I say motivate people. I just want to point out another subtlety of this chart. I don't remember if this was in the book or not, but when you're hiding information in a chart, you have to hide the fact that you hid it. So in this chart, like I showed you, there's supposed to be a group over here called those who took one vaccine. And we showed that that number would be all the way at the bottom. That doesn't look good, so they have to erase it. If they erase it, though, there's going to be something missing. If they labeled the chart at the bottom and it said those who got 0, those who got 2, and those who got 3, the omission of the 1 would be obvious. So one trick is to move the label somewhere else, not on the axis. So now you have, it's over here on the side. So now you have those who didn't get, those who got 2, those who got 3. And people don't see the glaring omission. But what I wanted to point out was not the glaring omission, but the subtle information that's missing, which is what percentage of the population got vaccinated, 1, 2, and 3, and 0. Without that information, this chart is completely meaningless. We can have examples where we can have, depending on the number of people who got vaccinated, we can have these numbers, 82%, 16%, and 2% show up, even if the vaccine is deadly, and the more vaccines a person takes, the sicker they get. How would that work? That is an extreme example, but I'm just trying to show the point. Let's say that the vaccine was actually deadly. It was actually killing people. That means if no one got the vaccine, a small percentage will get sick. You took 1, you got sicker. 2, you get sicker. 3, you got even sicker. If that was the reality, So it depends on how many people got vaccinated. I changed the numbers over here. I made it that 1,230 people got no vaccines at all. And then these teeny numbers over here, nobody got one, 20 got two, and one person got three. In such a case, the exact same chart would appear as we saw over here. This is the same chart. It's showing that those who got 0 have 82%. Those who have 1, nothing. Those who have 2, that's 16%. And those with 3 have 2%. So this chart doesn't really have any meaning. But they imposed meaning on it. They superimposed meaning onto it. And that's how propaganda works.